Well, hello everybody, welcome back to the channel and the latest update from the UK general election. More division, more segregation, more sectarianism, and of course, more hatred. The mainstream political parties, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, have been coming out over the last day or two with more nonsensical ideas to pander to certain bloc votes, even though it comes at a cost of dividing our society. This is about the Labour Party's latest move to pander to the Palestinian mob because they are losing the Islamic vote and they want to keep them happy. In this video, we are going to be doing some name and shaming. Oh yes, let's get on with the show. Alright, so a number of Labour Party parliamentary candidates have come out to sign essentially a pledge and manifesto. It's a set of pledges essentially with bullet points to talk about the Palestinian cause. They are standing on the Palestine ticket for the UK general election. These candidates want to be or remain as local MPs for British constituencies, but in reality they are controlled by the vested interests and the globalists. Let's do some naming and shaming. Let's start with Rachel Hopkins. Rachel Hopkins is the Labour candidate for Luton South and South Bedfordshire. Of course, Luton makes sense. She has to pander to that side because Luton has been experiencing multiculturalism over the last couple of decades and it's becoming a bit of a problem. Rachel said this: "I am proud to be backed by their Labour friends of Palestine," with the Palestinian flag emoji. "I have consistently supported an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, which is a surrender for IDF, the upholding of international law, and recognition of a Palestinian state. If re-elected on the 4th of July, I will continue to stand up in Parliament for peace and justice for Palestinians. Maybe you should stand up for your own local constituents." This is the set of bullet points that Rachel Hopkins has signed and supported, Labour Friends of Palestine and the Middle East. An immediate ceasefire and voted for one. She's basically bragging. Ban on UK arms sale being used against civilians. It's not really the case anyway. It's collateral damage in any conflict. Implementing the ICJ and ICC rulings. Oh dear. Full restoration of the UNRWA funding, which is linked to Hamas. Recognition of Palestine, but they don't really explain which part of Palestine, which government, which leadership, which territory. Are you going to do it with both Gaza and the West Bank? Really? Who's going to be in charge? Yahya Sinwar or Mahmoud Abbas? What's going to be the flag? Who's going to be the president? They can't explain any of this because they don't know anything. Let's go to the next one. Sarah Owen, the Labour candidate for Luton North, of course, another Luton. She does have the British flag emoji, and I believe that's a Malaysian flag emoji as well in her Twitter bio, so that's interesting. She also said, "I am hugely grateful for the work of the Labour Friends of Palestine and the Middle East and for their endorsement. I will continue to work with them if re-elected on advocating for peace and justice for the Palestinian people." They don't say peace and justice for people in the Middle East. They don't say peace and justice for both Israelis and Palestinians. They don't say peace and justice for Christians. They don't say peace and justice for people in the world in general. No, just for the Palestinian people. Not the Israelis, not the British. These are, again, the similar pledges that Sarah Owen has decided to support. Sarah Owen's action on Gaza, again, for the IDF to surrender. For Israelis not to be able to buy weapons, the UN agency linked to the Islamists, restoration of full funding, ICC, ICJ supported, and again, Palestinian state. Next one, Paula Barker. She's a Labour candidate for Liverpool Wavertree. So, she's an interesting one. She's a little bit loud, which kind of works for the left in Liverpool, but in reality, nothing she says makes sense. She says, "An end to the horrors taking place in Gaza, poor Islamists getting targeted, is a priority for many in Liverpool Wavertree. This compassion is part of what has made me so proud to represent you over the last 4 years. Not the rest of the constituents, just these guys. If re-elected, I will carry on being a voice for peace, accountability, and a two-state solution. Well, at least she says two-state solution, but she still can't really explain which parts of the Palestinian territory, who's going to be in the leadership, and how they're going to be doing it. Paula Barker is barking mad. Next. Well, not next, because this is, again, just to confirm, these are the pledges. Again, same list of a set of ideas that the barking mad Barker has supported. Next, Kim Johnson. Oh dear, yes. Oh, Kim is an interesting one as well. Of course, she's standing for Liverpool Riverside. I don't want to say she's a nutter, but some people might call her a nutter because she says nuttery things. So, she also posted, I am grateful for the work of the Labour Friends of Palestine and for their endorsement. If re-elected, I will continue to work with them on advocating for peace and justice for the Palestinian people. It's the same thing, just for the Palestinian people, not the Jews, nobody else. It's so embarrassing. While this is happening, the Tories are pandering to the Hindus, as you guys saw in the previous live stream. I mean, the whole thing is funny, but it's also sad and depressing. That's Kim's face and Kim's hair. She doesn't own a brush, which is sad. She can't afford a hairbrush. It's okay. We can help fund her campaign to own and buy a hairbrush. Now, there's been some reaction. The campaign against anti-Semitism have come out to say that it is alarming that a number of Labour candidates are calling for a full restoration of funding to UNRWA, with apparently no concern for long-standing allegations of anti-Semitism within the discredited UN agency, especially in its educational materials among its teachers, and claims that its facilities and even some staffers have been involved with Hamas, the anti-Semitic genocidal terror organization, and that massacred 1,200 Israelis and took some 250 hostages. At the time of surging anti-Semitism, all candidates for parliament should be committing to fighting the world's oldest hatred, not backing the organizations that enable and perpetuate it. You would think this should be common sense. Of course not. Not in 2024 Britannia. This is why multiculturalism doesn't work. Pandering. It creates division, it creates more segregation and sectarianism. We need harmony in the society. We need unity. So embarrassing. Also, is anybody going to be holding Keir Starmer to account? He is, at the end of the day, party leader. And these are the people standing on the platform of Keir Starmer's Labour Party. So bad. Now, what's going on in the live chat? Someone says, this is why multiculturalism doesn't work unless in rare circumstances. Hindus and Sikhs and most Europeans, and yes, some Muslims. No, multiculturalism doesn't work at all. Wherever you are, whatever land you live in, you have to all create harmony and work under the umbrella of one set of values, one common culture. It doesn't mean you have to, forget about your own identity. Every single individual has a different identity. People from the Scousers are from Liverpool think themselves are different compared to the Cornish from Cornwall. They have a different set of values, but they all still believe in British values, apart from the communists in Liverpool. Normal good people from Liverpool, they have differences. Even the British Scots have differences compared to the Londoners. They have different traditions, in terms of depending on the class and everything else that they have. Most of the countryside also have very different sort of lifestyle compared to people in London anyway. But you still have one common value, British values. Gary Webster says, this is so sad and shocking. Who would have ever thought that the UK would sink to such levels? Labour and conservatives are traitors. It's becoming more obvious every day now. Karen Taylor says, Labour Friends of Palestine show the colours of Islam. Red, green and white and flag. Well, obviously, they're going to claim that it's the flag of colours of Palestine. But yeah, it's the same thing, basically. Tommy Shalom Cat says, leave us out of your campaigns, FFS. They're not going to do that. They're obsessed. They're absolutely obsessed. Enoch says they're multiculti, I think it's multiculturalism, is a direct contradiction of diversity. Crime Bull says, you're effing joking. Well, not really surprising, really. It's still shocking. It's not surprising, but it is shocking, really. Manusha says, I eat bacon and drink gin and tonic to be more British. Good idea. ST says, Labour is Islam. Although they are still losing a chunk of the Islamic vote to George Galloway's party and the Green Party, so that's kind of funny as well. But it is what it is. This is what they've done. And because a lot of people across the country are burying their heads in the sand, they allowed this to happen. They didn't show outrage. That's why, in this general election, neither of the main two parties, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, have been talking about innocent white English teenage girls being victims of grooming gangs across England. They don't even talk about the Pakistani grooming gangs. It's controversial. They don't care. They'll rather pander to block votes than to stand up for individuals who are being harmed in our country. Pandering is the 21st century trend. It is. It's a version of virtue signaling. It is. It's not directly, but it is. Anthony says this country is headed for riots and civil unrest. Well, again, I'm not. People have been saying this for 30 years, but there could come a time when people get sick and tired. But there is also a bit of hope with the rise of Reform UK and Nigel Farage. While it's not a completely perfect movement, not everybody agrees with everything they say. But I think there is the vibe is changing across the country. They believe that there is a bit of hope. Maybe not this time, but there is hope for creating a big grassroots movement on behalf of the people, a good populist patriotic movement in the name of Nigel Farage's reform. This could prevent, any civil unrest. It's also because it's not really in the British mentality or the blood of this culture to do unrest anyway, compared to the French. But again, things are changing. The whole game in the world is changing. Don't be surprised if 20 years, 10 years, 5 years from now, we start seeing absolute chaos on the streets. Nobody wants it. It's the job of the so-called establishment to keep us safe. But I don't understand what they're doing. Super chat time from Barbara saying, I hope these silly women wearing their burqa wear their burqas on election day and let their constituents see their true colours. Exactly. It still reminds me of the other week when Angela Rayner went to a meeting with the Islamic men, just the men, by the way, because obviously they can't all be mixed, to beg them to vote for the Labour Party. Do you really think a woman like Angela Rayner sitting there without covering her hair would be respected by those guys? A lot of them? Do you really think that? Alana says, I am fully behind the Jewish people. Good. And Football Crazy says, isn't Starmer's wife Jewish? They don't care at this point. It's the whole issue is it's more complicated. There's an element of those who also claim to be Christian or atheists or whatever they are, who don't really stand up for our values, don't really support or defend this country. We literally had Keir Starmer about an hour ago on GB News, I believe, saying a few weird things. He said he is quietly patriotic. I'm literally quoting him. He was quietly patriotic. He can't even say he's proudly patriotic. Also, he didn't really clarify which country he's patriotic towards. Obviously, he meant the UK, but quietly patriotic. And then Keir Starmer and the Labour Party keep talking about the working people. We are doing things for the working people. And during this interview, Christopher Hope asked Keir Starmer, so who are the working people, right? What do you think Keir Starmer said? The robot Keir Starmer that's been built by ChatGPT. He said, the working people are those who work for a living. So almost basically everyone. Apart from those on benefits, everyone. But he was like, no, well, we're doing policies for the working people. Like, what does that even mean? You're just using words. It's like David Cameron's 2015 election, the Tories, hard-working families. Why hard-working families? There are also families that don't work hard, but they work smart. Also, there are families who work hard, but they're still losers, unfortunately, because they're not smart enough. Hard-working families. They don't even know what they're talking about. Karen says, Starmer is patriotic to the people who pay his salary. But this is the man who, a year ago, when he was asked, what do you prefer? Westminster democracy, parliamentary democracy in Westminster, or the World Economic Forum conference in Davos? He said Davos. He prefers Davos because they don't attack him and everybody likes him and they all agree with everything they say. Their man doesn't respect not just Britain, but also democracy. He's a globalist sellout. Music and Fiction says, Jews for reform. I smell a good opportunity to poach Jewish folks from the Tories and Labour. Hopefully Reform UK is taking advantage of this issue. Absolutely. Well, I came from the counter-protest earlier, and I spoke to obviously a lot of them. I showed them because the latest opinion poll has just come out, in case you haven't seen. Let me just put it on the screen for you guys. Things are changing fast, by the way. The latest opinion poll that's now been released, there we go, I've got it, shows that for the first time ever, Reform UK has hit 20%. And obviously they are now consistently the second party above the Tories. They are now 20% for the first time, and it's still going up. Labour Party is coming down because the Labour vote is now going to Reform. They're not the socialists. They are the people who recently said, oh, we're going to vote Labour because they didn't want to vote Tory. They didn't have an alternative. But when Nigel Farage came back, they are now slowly going to Nigel. So Labour's coming down a little bit. Reform is going up. And I showed this to the people at the counter-protest, the Jewish community who were there. And everybody celebrated. It was like, yes. So a big chunk of the Jews in the UK are going to be now voting Reform, because what's the point of voting Tory anyway? And you can't vote for the Labour Party if you're Jewish, or actually if you're Christian, because they don't care about you. Super chat from I Said What I Said. I love the name, by the way. Thank you. And it's the little things again saying, thank you so much for speaking up about us and your people. We appreciate it. Thank you very much for your super chat. These are dark times, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, guys. Candace says, the issue with Britain is the same in the US. Immigrants move to cities, and then we folks in the country have to suffer because the cities have the population. It's horrid. Well, yeah, I mean, the issues that we now face in the UK, for example, same applies to Americans as well, is about 10 years ago when people in the countryside were complaining about immigration, mass migration. The media used to call them weirdos, saying, well, you live in a village or a small town, you haven't even seen a foreigner, what's the problem? But they could see what was going to happen now, because right now, mass migration means that it's not really just big cities. They have to go to smaller towns and villages. Nowhere is safe, because we haven't vetted these people's backgrounds. And among those who are coming from the small boats especially, it's like the Mexican border, not only have criminals, but you also have those with very, very different values, backwards, barbaric mentality that create grooming gangs and everything else. And people don't feel safe. Of course people don't feel safe. So those in villages and small towns have been proven right. Even though back then, the establishment made fun of them. Halva says, Maya, as an Iranian who's from a Muslim country, I do not consider Iran a Muslim country. It's an Islamic regime because they have Islamic occupation. Considering that 30% of the Iranians are practicing Muslims, it's not really a Muslim country. May God guide you into seeing the truth. What is the truth? Because if it's Islam, I'm not going I'm not abandoning Team Jesus to go to Islam. I literally escaped. My mom literally escaped Iran because it's under the Islamic occupation. Why would I do that? Team Jesus. Oh dear. Anyway. Tommy says, Starmer is lucky that the elections are on the 4th. Well, I don't think this Labour government is going to be sustainable anyway. It's not going to last that long. So we'll have to wait and see the reaction to it from the general public. By Christmas, you can see the opinion polls, see the outrage, unless somehow Starmer manages, using some miracle, to keep stability. It's going to be very difficult to see how this parliament is going to be reasonably stable. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. We're going to come back in a bit with more updates. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.